Welcome to Lead Today with me, Kalyna. Let's talk leadership. Hello, always good to be with you and excited to have some space to chat. As you know, this is my little safe haven. It's just such a joy for me because, one, most of my profession is listening. And so over the years, anyone that knows me knows I'm a talker. And so being a coach, it's really taught me how to listen. Sorry, and just fix my mic a little bit here. So yeah, this is just an amazing outlet, and I'm always so grateful when I get to sit down with you. And sometimes I find myself avoiding it. I don't know what it is. Um, I think I think like anything that's good for us, sometimes we have this initial resistance, right? Where it's like, oh, I should go for a walk. And that little resistance, it's a funny thing because the moment you step over that resistance, the moment it instantly there's this relief, it feels better, but our body, our not even sometimes our bodies can hold the resistance, our minds hold the resistance of like, no, no, just don't. And so it's a funny thing to consciously work on that voice, that internal voice. And this podcast and me, myself, biggest thing I work on is that voice, the voice of, the critic, the voice of the creator, looking at who is it that's in the driver's seat of my mind. If any of that dialogue interests you, there are episodes on internal family systems. There is an episode on the internal critic and this triangle of critic, realist, and creator, and kind of how those work together. And I would highly recommend you check those episodes out. But for today, let's not go down that rabbit hole because I could talk ad nauseum about all things coaching, coaching concepts. But today, I would like to talk about something that I've heard called intuitive parenting. It's not necessarily a coined term, I don't think, but just some influencer types kind of slinging around, oh, be an intuitive parent. And I just want to chime in and say, okay, well, what are we really talking about here? And I think it lends itself to my previous episode where I talked about living on the fringe and being this social observer, because frankly, intuitive parenting would require you to actually know what it is that your intuition is saying. And so I suppose it does link back to my first thoughts about, well, who's in the driver's seat? Because it really depends on who is in the driver's seat. And as a new parent, as a parent, you get a bad night's sleep, you've got a very different voice in your mind compared to if you've had a good night's sleep. And that's just one variable, right? Put in multiple kids, put in bad day at work, bad day in the relationship front, sickness. I mean, add in anything, and those voices change substantially. Sleep comes to mind because it's just this number one big thing that, man, if you don't get good sleep, the voices in your head are going to be very, very different. And so, intuitive parenting, I think it is important to have your standards of integrity, those things that are non-negotiable for you, because when you're running on honestly survival mode, autopilot, whatever you want to call it, having intuitive parenting be what you say, I think it's well intentioned, but it doesn't always feel intuitive to be the parent that you want to be. And so and maybe this is the coach brain in me, right? But it's like, who am I? Who do I want to be? And there's always, always this disconnect, right? I get it right sometimes, and I don't get it right a lot of times as well. And so there's this person that I want to be, that I aim to be, that I hope to be, that I have role models that I wish to emulate. But day to day, how often is that picture lining up? And hopefully yours is lining up a lot of the time. For me, I know I miss the mark a lot. And so this idea of intuitive, what's intuitive to me does not always fit. It isn't always right for what I actually want to be. And so I think we just need to be very careful about this idea of intuition, because if you're talking about somebody very basically, a gut feeling, okay, that's one type of intuition. Some people get a feeling, a thought. It depends what you define as intuition, maybe. So maybe we have to go there. and actually define it. But I think we all kind of have this idea of, okay, my intuition, I get this feeling, I have this thought, this is what I quote unquote should do, it feels right. And we can't necessarily explain in words what feels right. The challenge is when I haven't slept well, what feels right is, a cookie at 3 p.m. or a cake, or like the things that feel right aren't necessarily what are going to serve me. And again, that vision that I want to hold myself to. And so I think intuitive parenting is important from the thought of, okay, separating from the herd and really being clear in our own thoughts, separate yourself from what your mom is saying, from what your in-laws are saying, from what your friends are doing, and then having that, I guess, parenting discussion with your partner, and then visioning and deciding, okay, what kind of parent do I want to be? But then in the moment, intuition would be, okay, here's my model of the type of mom I want to be. What would that mom do? And having the intuitive answer come to you. That to me would be intuitive parenting. So and this might just sound nuanced, maybe I'm being difficult, I don't know. But I just, there's this additional little layer I see that isn't always addressed when people talk about intuitive parenting, because it's just, oh, do what feels right. And that's challenging across the board of your life, because what feels right is very subjective in the moment, dependent upon your emotional state, right? Because and just the variety of your environment, the factors. But hang on, if we're saying we want to be a certain type of parent, then the environment shouldn't matter. Like, let's say I don't want to yell at my kid, or I don't want to hit my kid, or I don't want to there's certain language that I don't want to curse in front of my kid. Like, whatever it is that these guardrails you have for yourself, environment then shouldn't dictate how you behave. But we know very clearly that human behavior is absolutely influenced by environment, right? So if your behavior is influenced by environment, then your intuition will be different, right? And so that's where these feelings, we have to be careful, not because our feelings are wrong, but because we have this little layer that needs to come into play with our feelings. And so when I'm tired and I'm impatient and I'm like, okay, we just need to get this done, I really, when I start having those thoughts, I have to have that ability. And people will say meditation helps you with this. I think, what helps me with this? I think questioning my internal dialogue. Like that's literally the only, it's like, wait, what am I thinking? What am I doing? What am I saying? Like the fact that I constantly question the thoughts that are running. So just that one simple switch of, okay, I'm going to question the thoughts that are in my head as true. And they're true. Like, and that's like a Byron Katie, is it true? It's true because it's what you're thinking. So we need to, like, we should be careful with that too, because is it true? Yes, your thoughts are true. Like, you're just having thoughts, right? It's just like stream of consciousness. But if we go from a meditation concept, which by the way, that was like one of the best classes I took at U of T, was I don't know the specific like code of it. It was like meditation, mindfulness, and Buddhism, something like that. And it was just such a phenomenal class. And the guy, was it a male professor? I just, I have a feeling it was. Man, I can't believe I don't remember the professor. It was a great class. He put a circle on the chalkboard, and he kind of drew a line going out from the circle and then coming back in. And then, kind of like a flower, like a line goes out, comes back in. And you have these loops. And the thought was, okay, you just come back to that single reference point. Your mind will wander, and the wandering is expected, but come back to that individual reference point. And this is the same thing. Okay, your mind is going to say all sorts of different things, but come back to, okay, hang on, like check in on your thoughts. What am I thinking? What am I thinking? It's like your life is an internal meditation, right? That's what it is, in my opinion. Like, it's people when they're like, oh, I sit and I create this environment. That's fantastic for practice. But really, if you can meditate while having a screaming toddler, while doing the dishes, while being in traffic, if you can meditate no matter what the situation, by coming back to that single reference point, your mind is wandering and you're coming back. That to me is a signal of a masterful practitioner, in my opinion. So, okay, how does this relate to parenting? Well, someone is freaking out, one of your kids, you are freaking out, situation is challenging you. I have, it's actually that, what I just did. I've found that a deep breath is better than any other tool that I've possibly found. There are other physical tools. You can clench your fists if you're feeling frustrated. You'll notice your jaw gets tense, your shoulders might go up. There are physical responses to scenarios that you do unconsciously without even thinking about it. But what I have found, if I just feel, okay, this is overwhelming, but you actually have to do it. And that's the point of mastery, is noticing you have to notice you feel overwhelmed. So your words are getting faster, you just feel frustrated. Once you notice it's bubbling, right? I mean, you can, some people, it takes longer for them to notice that they're frustrated. And so if you have a trouble realizing that you're overwhelmed, you're tired, some people, so it's also dependent on what it is that you tune into, because some people are very sensitive to anger, some people are very sensitive to sadness, some people are very sensitive to fear. So it depends kind of what you're sensitive to, because some people are just not sensitive to anger. And so they'll be super frustrated and they just kind of miss the cues of that because they're not sensitive to it. Versus some people are very sensitive to sadness. They will catch those cues right away. And so it depends on what you're sensitive to, and becoming more sensitive to your own cues is going to help you in this process to then be able to say, okay, I'm feeling a certain way. And then, okay, this is why I'm having these thoughts, interrupt the thought pattern, have the different response. And this is all, I mean, this happens at light speed. You're tired, remember? You didn't sleep well. So we're asking we're asking a lot of ourselves, but it is possible. And the pause is what I have found has been the single most effective tool for me. Just pausing in between my reaction. And sometimes, if someone else is worked up, that's very frustrating for them. And fair enough, it might be, right? If you're really aggravated and someone else is just like taking a deep breath and not matching your level of speech, the speed, the intensity, the tone, the volume, then that's frustrating. But they can't go any faster than the slowest person in the conversation, in a sense, right? Like, I mean, they can keep yelling and arguing and whatever, but if you're not engaging and responding, they're going to have to tucker out, essentially. And what you can do if you are in a conversation with someone else, toddler or otherwise, is, of course, the physical approach. Would you like a hug? Would you like me to hold you? Would you like me to hold your hand? Of course, they can say no. And if they're very escalated, that might not work. But there is an opportunity there for getting co-regulated using physical touch. If again they're not super aggravated, it depends on the person. um I don't always want that, right? It's like, do you want a hug? No, I'm really upset. Why would I want a hug? So you've got to read the situation a little bit. But I will say, this is just my take. Intuitive parenting needs that additional step. We need an additional layer of, my intuition is telling me something, there's a reason for it, but is the reason something I should follow, or is the reason because I didn't sleep well? So we do, in this case, a lot of times with coaching, it's like, oh, you don't need to know the why of, well, let's say someone has a habit or a pattern. We don't need to know why is it coming from when they were 4 years old, such and such happened with their mom. Like, we don't necessarily need to know the why in order to correct the pattern. And that's still true here, but we do need to know the why in terms of the rationale of your mind. Your mind saying, this is why. I'm tired, so I'm going to yell at this person, right? Yelling at the person is not the person you want to be. Your intuition, or that gut reaction, is from a place of survival. It's from a place of exhaustion. It's coming from an authentic place. But that doesn't mean that we want to behave that way. And if we can pause in between, if we can create that interruption, then we can maybe be the person we want to be more often than that reactive person. And so, intuitive, I think most people would say, yes, you have to tune into your intuition so that you can respond. And so there is a discussion in intuitive parenting, but I kind of just, I needed to say this. I needed to say this in my own way, because it's not just, you don't always have the time to kind of go and have a meditation and think about it. Like, these are like reactionary things on the fly when your kid is like throwing the bowl on the floor, and then it's all over the dog and you're running around and whatever, they take their diaper off. Like, just things are like occurring, right? All at once. And so it doesn't always feel like you have access to, like, tap into your intuition. That type of language for me, sometimes it's like, wow, I can't feel my body. I feel like I'm in an emergency responding to a scenario. And so the only thing that I feel that I have available to myself in that moment is that deep breath, is that pause, is because the pause allows me to say, okay, it's not an emergency. Okay, I'm tired. I really just want to yell right now, but I don't want to be that person, right? I don't want to yell. I don't want to. And, of course, we look at our parents and how did our parents respond, and we want to do things differently. And so, great, right? But that intuitive response is often how your parents would have done things, right? Because that's the knee jerk reaction. That is what your body, your mind is saying, freak out, yell or whatever, the scream, like whatever that you have grown up with being that knee jerk reaction is often what comes out of an intuitive response for many people because of the environment, the situation, all these factors that are at play, right? So, like, if you're in this quiet room with nobody pressuring you, sure, your intuitive response might be that highest, good, best version of you response. And that you do need to tap into that again to come up with, okay, what is this vision of a parent I want to be? Lest you fall into the trap of being exactly like your parents, right? Like anybody that parents exactly like their parents, they need to do the introspection to get an idea of, okay, what kind of parent do I want to be? What is my intuition saying about things? Like, I think that's a valuable exercise. But I think most people, you take some things from your parents that you think were great, and there are things that you want to do differently and that you're trying to improve and grow upon, right? All of their learnings, your learnings, we're trying to evolve and grow and improve. And so that takes constant iteration, but it also does take introspection to say, okay, what are the similarities and what are the differences in parenting styles? But again, when when the soup's on the floor, the dog's running around and barking, there are all these different stimuli at hand. Often, at least for me, you just want to snap, right? Because it's almost like there's too much information overflowing. There's too much overload stimuli. There's too many pieces of information for you to almost tune into what your intuition is. Like, how can you be an intuitive parent when you feel overloaded by all of the stimuli? There's too much going on and you haven't slept well for X number of nights, weeks, months, years, maybe. I mean, I don't know. Somebody with 4 small kids, how much sleep are you getting? It, depends on the family. And that might be another episode and another discussion, right? Of like creating the household that is supportive to all family members. That's something for sure, because I think oftentimes, the household is supportive to the father that works, but if the mother is not working or is home, or even when the mother's working, the mother takes a lot of that home burden on, planning events, all the social calendars, remembering all the special things, birthdays, special dates, practices, the project needs to get done, whatever, like all the details is on her, on the mom. And that's a mental load that we know is carried. And it's not always at the home. The home might be a very safe, comforting place for the children. The husband might feel nurtured, but where does that leave the mom? So that might be another episode in and of itself. And I do have some things in the works for you guys about that and how I hope to support you. I will be honest in saying, it's something that I'm working on for myself as well. It is a work in progress, but I think I've come up with some decent tools. And more than that, of course, I'm in career design and leadership development, and so I'd be remiss if I didn't say we're also going to tack on, okay, how does your contribution to the outside world work with motherhood? But not for today. Today, we stick with this idea of intuitive parenting, what it means in my mind, how I relate to it, what I think works, a small switch, which is just that brief pause, which I think we all know it, but it's a good reminder because how often do we actually use it? And so let's use it. Let's use the pause to give ourselves that extra micro millisecond moment to just think about a different response, to take a deep breath so that you can't just snap back at whoever it is that's testing your patience at the moment. So, something I can work on, something you can work on, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one where we will discuss something else just as riveting as today. So, I hope you take good care until then and see you soon.